And from the Philippines as well. Magandang umaga. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Willy Renandya. I'm a language teacher educator teaching at the National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. Today, I'm very privileged to chair the session, to moderate the session. And the topic today is very, very interesting and very, very relevant for everyone in the audience. Roger Bernard from New Zealand as well. In today's session, we'll have three main speakers, one from New Zealand and one from Malaysia and one from Singapore. And we also have a very special guest, also from the University of Malaya. But before we start our session, I would like to invite Dr. Adelina Asmawi. I hope I got your last name correct. The head of the English department of the University of Malaya, to say one or two words, greeting you, welcoming you to today's session. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Adelina.
Thank you very much, Dr. Willy. First of all, thank you for agreeing to moderate the webinar. A lovely morning, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Thank you to Dr. Zuwati for organizing this webinar and getting this running today. Dr. Fatiha for assisting. Thank you to the speakers for agreeing as well to be here, the three speakers, plus the guest speaker, of course, Dr. Fatiha. Thanks to the participants for being here, and I hope you have a fruitful session today. All the best. And on behalf of the Department of Language and Literacy Education, check this out on YouTube and also the other webinars we have had and will continue having in the future. Have fun, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Short and sweet, just the way I like it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to begin soon. Again, the topic today is building and strengthening research capacity in language education, or in particular in English language teaching or English language education. The first speaker who will be sharing with you the knowledge, experience, and expertise is Dr. Laura Gurney. She is a senior lecturer at the School of Education, University of Waikato, New Zealand. She is a very experienced language teacher and also translator. That is a very interesting, skill, translator. Her research interests include the use of languages in higher education, theories of language and languaging, and also teacher development or teacher training. She will share with us a very interesting topic, promoting research collaboration in ELT. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Laura Gurney from New Zealand.
Thank you so much, Dr. Willy, and thank you to Dr. Adelina and Dr. Zuwati for organising and for presenting and introducing the session today. It's lovely to see you all. I hope soon, sometime we might be able to do something like this in person, but for now, using Zoom is very, very nice. So thank you so much for inviting me to present today. I'm going to share my screen, so just bear with me for 1 second. You should be able to see a PowerPoint now. I'm just going to go to presenter view. Can everybody see, can somebody just confirm that they can see my slides?
Yes, and your notes as well.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, no, that's all good. Are you happy for me to proceed with the view, the current view? Yep.
That should be okay, yeah.
All right, okay, great. All right, so teaching. This presentation is really designed for early career researchers, graduate researchers. So if you're doing a PhD or a master's degree, if you're kind of thinking about what might be involved in collaborating, or you've got some ideas for a project that you'd like to put together, I hope this presentation will be useful to you. I'm not going to only address the benefits of collaboration. To be realistic, I'm also going to talk about some of the challenges, but to also be pragmatic, I'm going to give you some possible solutions or ways in which you might avoid challenges and work towards having a really positive experience in your research collaboration. So the first question I think that we should ask ourselves and meaningfully engage with this question is, why do we collaborate in the first place? What's the point, and what, more importantly, are the benefits? Well, we can say fairly confidently that collaborating across disciplinary, institutional, and also international borders and our benefits and affordances are often quite similar across different contextual boundaries. This is one of the benefits of doing it. We can address some of these things and work together to produce some really impactful research. As a second point, drawing on multiple perspectives can help to strengthen our understanding of the research focus. So it's not just about developing the research itself, but it's also about helping our own personal and professional development as researchers. So this means we might gain better understandings of the field in which we work, and possibly to perceive how we fit in to the larger jigsaw that is research in our area. We can't research everything, and of course we don't do that. That's not how research comes together. We're really part of a larger jigsaw, and collaborating can be a really useful way of understanding how we fit in to that larger picture. And to be very pragmatic, collaboration can also help us to develop our research portfolios. So this is a way in which we might develop strong, impactful outputs. In the journal Nature, which recently came out to highlight the issues and benefits of collaboration in research. Now, as you may know, cross-disciplinarily about these matters can be very beneficial. Researchers in the natural sciences have been collaborating for an extended period of time, and they often work in very big teams. So I think we can learn quite a lot from them by reading about their experiences and also following some of the suggestions that they make, even though what we're researching can be quite different. So I've linked a few sources at the end of this PowerPoint, and I'm sure you'll be able to access a copy of them. If you'd like to do some further reading, I do highly recommend that. So let's narrow down a little bit into the field of English language teaching, or ELT, because I would like to emphasize why we should collaborate, or why should we engage in this interdisciplinary or intercontextual cross-boundary research in our particular field. Research is always contextualized, of course, and there are specific questions and problems that we all encounter. So I think it's important to navigate the disciplinary field. Being a teacher, being a language teacher, is almost an interdisciplinary profession. We're not just one thing. I know that a lot of people around the world, they can have some fairly simple, and by people I mean people who don't necessarily work in language teaching, they can have some fairly simple understandings of what it is that we do. We just teach language, right? We go into a classroom, we teach language, students learn what we're teaching, and then presto, we're all done and everything's fine. But to be realistic, it's a lot more complex than this. So we often have to take on multiple roles where language teachers, we have to understand issues of culture, we have to understand assessment, we have to understand emotions and how learners are motivated or not motivated. We have to understand engagement. We have to try and understand cognitive approaches. How much can learners concentrate? How much content can they take in at once? So all of these multiple roles that we play as teachers are absolutely reflected in the roles that we play as ELT researchers. So look, from my quick notes, I've written down a whole list of different fields in which we we branch out as ELT researchers. There's education, which in itself is interdisciplinary, linguistics and applied linguistics. There's technology, particularly at the moment, around blended learning and how do we teach learners online. Psychology, cultural studies, that's a big field in itself. Politics, anthropology, increasingly there's a focus on neuroscience. What can we learn from studies of the brain? As educators, we're often quite interested with that. What can this contribute to how we practice, and also how we frame the problems and the questions that we encounter in the field, and more. This is certainly not an exhaustive list. This is just a few ideas to get us going, and really to emphasize the fact that it's really very interdisciplinary. So taking all of this into account, we can't possibly be experts across all of these areas. That's not necessarily going to happen. So making original and impactful contributions. So contributions that might make a difference, or that people might take up and think about, or they might change their thinking, or they might actually put into practice. This can involve engaging with this complexity. We shouldn't simplify the field just because we study a portion of it. That would misrepresent the complexity of the field. So a great way of embracing, I think the word is embracing, this interdisciplinary complexity is to consider collaborative research with authors who have complementary expertise. So people who study fields which might come together nicely to complement what we know and put together a larger, more complex project. I must say also the international nature of ELT lends itself extremely well to collaborating across borders. That's something that is that's becoming increasingly clear to me. It's very, very valuable. Some very nice research is often done across borders. And we might also consider, of course, collaborating with practicing teachers. We can learn a lot from collaborating with teachers in classrooms about face-to-face practice, online practice, assessment, curriculum, working with learners, and so forth. If we are applied linguists, that really needs to be operating at the back of our mind as researchers as well. So in all, quite a few reasons, I think, to bolster our efforts towards collaborative research in ELT. Now, there might be some common reasons for collaborating. I'll just skip to my next slide. Or perhaps you could call these models for how collaborative teams come together. I've just sketched out 4 of them here. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just to paint a little bit of a picture of how people come together effectively to work in teams and to help you think about how this might apply to your own context and your own situation. So the top left side, I've got collaborators who share expertise and interest in a similar area. So really 2 people who have similar educational backgrounds, they might have similar practice backgrounds and similar interests. This is a situation of 2 heads being better than 1. You can pool together your skills and your resources, and some really nice projects can come out of teams like that who have complementary, similar expertise. If we move across to the top right corner, I've got collaborators who come from different areas of expertise, which they can bring together for a project. So that's another effective way of put together a project to address whatever you've noticed that's going on that you'd like to explore further. Down the bottom left-hand side, I've got a very common model for collaboration, which can be very effective and can sometimes not work as well as we would like it to. This is where junior and senior colleagues might work together. So this could be somebody working with their PhD supervisor, or some sort of, situation where there's a junior-senior dynamic. So it could be with a supervisor, it could be with a colleague, it could be with a research mentor. And in these cases, the collaboration can look a little bit different, because it might be that the more senior colleague is taking more of a mentoring role, or they perhaps are leading the project and the junior colleague is assisting them in different ways without necessarily determining the direction of the research or the project. And down the bottom right-hand side, I've got one more. Again, this list is not exhaustive, just to get you thinking about some possible ways that people can come together effectively. This obviously you use for academic purposes classes. So you might have somebody who specialises in English for academic purposes and somebody who specialises in assessment, and they could come together to paint that picture in a really descriptive and detailed, I think is the better word, in a really detailed way. You might have somebody who specialises in the theoretical paradigm. Let's say you want to do a project in phenomenology. Let's say you want to do constructivism. You want to do critical realism, but you're not really sure about what that might look like. Yeah, you want to use critical realism in your project in assessment in EAP classrooms. So you might bring somebody on board who is a critical realist and who understands that paradigm, who knows the key literature, and who can help you to put that into practice when it comes to gathering some data or perhaps analysing data. Of course, you could have a methodologist, somebody who specialises in particular approaches to gathering data, who's great at designing data collection. But to think that, well, you can piece together a team in a very effective way by looking at the different kinds of expertise that the people can bring to the project. It could be in topic, it could be in experience, it could be in the sort of element of research that they can contribute to your project. Again, of course, this is not an exhaustive list. You might have other models for collaboration, but I think this is a nice way to start thinking about it, that there's no single universal way of putting together an effective collaborative team. However, at this point, I think it's really important to start to address the concept or the idea of what actually counts as a collaboration. What counts as meaningful contribution, and what does somebody need to do in order to take part effectively in a collaboration? Now, this idea, I think this is really, really important to keep in mind from the very beginning of a collaborative project. What actually is every team member going to bring to the table, as we say? What are they going to contribute, and how are they going to help the project to, to successfully get to completion and perhaps beyond, perhaps to generate other projects beyond that? So I've here got a few little boxes, or little circles they are, in grey, and a couple in colour. And I've greyed out the ones up here because this is an open question really for you to reflect on. Do these count as a meaningful contribution to a collaborative research project? So they've got question marks after them because they are designed to make you think. There's no yes or no answer. It really needs to be determined in situ for every particular project. But I would like you to take a moment and have a think about it. The first one is editing a full draft of a paper or providing some comments on a draft that's been prepared by another author or another group of authors. Does that count as a significant contribution? What about gathering the data? Collecting data via a survey or maybe conducting interviews. Would that count as a meaningful contribution? How about conducting a literature review or even a literature scan? So in that case, I'm differentiating those. A literature review would be finding relevant literature and writing up notes and synthesizing that and identifying gaps in the field. Whereas a literature scan could be going through your library database, Google Scholar, and finding pertinent research to your topic. So going through and coming up with a list of relevant articles or relevant books and chapters and giving them to the team. How about down here in the middle, providing ideas or research or readings for a project? If somebody brings to the table some ideas or some possible readings, an article, a special issue, is that sufficient? How about conducting the data analysis? This may be done in relation to also having gathered the data, or it might just be somebody encountering the data for the first time at the point of analysis. What about writing an introduction? Would that count? So again, these are not, I don't mean to say yes, no to these. I certainly know for myself which of these I would consider to be a significant contribution that I would expect from a co-author, but it really depends on the size of the team and the nature of the project. I think it's extremely important, rather than having a tick sheet in your mind as to what counts as a contribution, that you reflect and you think about this for your own purposes and what for you is a meaningful enough, significant contribution. I have got a point down here and next to my orange circle, and it's bolded because it is important. It is crucial that each author makes a substantial contribution. That is the key to a successful, fruitful, and hopefully long-term collaboration that might extend beyond just one particular project, which I think really is ideal for this. Now, one way of ensuring that your collaboration does work towards that, to follow that ideal model, is to clearly assign responsibilities from the beginning. That can be really helpful. So having an open discussion around what is expected from each team member, and also what's not expected, can be a very fruitful and I think practical, sensible way of going about this. Of course, there's no one way of doing it, but that's one of the suggestions that's highly recommended if you look up the literature on research collaboration. So what happens when it doesn't go to plan? What happens when we're like this lady here in the picture on the left and we're thinking, oh, what's going on? I've set up this good project, I've assigned people, we've worked together in a group, we've had Zoom meetings, we've had face-to-face meetings, we've talked about what we want to achieve, we've got plans, research questions, data collection instruments, but somebody's not pulling their weight, or somebody's dropped off, or this is just not working, this is just, something's going wrong. Now, a couple of points here that I do want to make. We all want our work to be fairly acknowledged. We're all busy. There might be some senior, junior collaborators on the team, so there could be some, sensitivity there in terms of the authority of different members of the group. We might have different perspectives on the roles of team members. So if somebody is nominated as the lead author or the first author or the lead or principal investigator, some members of the team might think that that comes with certain responsibilities, whereas others might not agree with that. So there's often unspoken expectations around what each person does on the team. Now, we know that do need to be able to negotiate it. So it's not that we have to try and avoid disagreement at all costs, but we should have a sensible, responsible, ethical way of dealing with disagreements around, for example, authorship and contribution. So what might we do for this? Well, I'm going to give you a few ideas. Of course, keeping in mind that we don't have a very long time. These are just some ideas to get you thinking. And of course, you might get in touch if you want to. You're more than welcome to do that. Or you might use this as a prompt to think through these for yourself down the track. So this is a really nice resource that I've used myself. It is by the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. So it's an organisation that's not in our field again, but I think we can take some useful pointers and tips from them. Absolutely nothing wrong with reading beyond our field. There's a lot of good work around the world, and I think if we can try and read as much of it as we can, that's a really useful thing to do. So the ICs are actually quite exigent. They're quite strict criteria. The first is that substantial contributions to the conception or the design of the work is made by each person, or to the acquisition, analysis, or interpretation of data, plus drafting the work and revising it for important intellectual content, plus final approval of the version to be published, plus agreement to be held accountable for all aspects of the work, ensuring that questions related to the accuracy or integrity of the work are appropriately investigated and resolved. So this is something that the ICMJE considers to be sufficient, important, and relevant for people who've published in their area. I've got another reflective question for you, which is, do you think that criteria like this could work in ELT? Again, I don't have an answer for that, but I think they're a very good place to start thinking. The nature of the work that we do in some ways is quite different from what we might do in this field, in the natural sciences, in medicine, but in some ways it can be quite similar. So I think trying to take useful ideas and useful content from organisations like this can be a very, very sensible place to start. And this might be something that you bring up. I think I could see that as a really beneficial activity for a research group to bring up these 4 criteria at a meeting and say, what do we think about these? Do we want to work towards this, or do we want to adjust the model for collaboration and make something that works for us? But I will reiterate that it's very important that everybody does make a substantial contribution and that every member of the collaborative team knows what they're doing and what's expected of them. So I do have one final slide here, and I know I've got about a minute to go, I think, before I hit the 20-minute mark. This is just a final, a few things I want to say about difficulties and disagreements. So far, I've talked about disagreements in relation to the actual process of the work. So who does the lit review, who collects the data, who comes up with or negotiates the research questions, who writes the survey, and so on and so forth. But I've kind of skipped over the question of whether all of the contributors are happy with the design of the project and the focus of the project and the actual content and questions that are being asked in the first place. So I've delineated on this slide, just to get you thinking about this, 2 different types of disagreements or difficulties that you might encounter. And I do see 2 different responses to these. So the first addresses the substance of the collaboration. So here I'm really talking about the content, the questions that you ask, the methodologies that you use, the theoretical frames that you've employed, the research paradigms, and so on. So really the substance of what you're talking about. Now, I think that academics should feel free to disagree and have different perspectives. I don't think that that should terminate relationships. I think we should cultivate a culture of being comfortable disagreeing in a civil, polite, and respectful way. But that's, that's the nature of research. So if we're going to do good research, substantial research that we can actually get behind and feel. So if one member of the team is not feeling comfortable with the direction of the research, that doesn't mean that the research itself is doomed or that there's anything necessarily bad, inherently wrong with the research. But it might be that that person no longer really wants to be part of the team because they see it following a paradigm that they just don't want to work with or that they don't want to employ for any number of reasons. If this does happen in a project that you're collaborating on, I would advise you to tell your potential collaborators as early as possible. Be clear, be open. It's not a criticism of the work. It's simply that you don't want to go down that track. And that's absolutely fine. So again, open communication is really key there, and telling the collaborators why you're making the choice you're making. The second can be a little more tricky. It's around the process of the collaboration. So this is where everybody's happy with the research questions. Everybody wants to investigate this field. They want to learn more about whatever it is that you're looking at, and they're happy to follow the research paradigms that have been selected to follow that and to pursue those questions. But now, this can be tricky. Again, I would encourage you to think about roles from the very beginning of your collaborative projects. I would say agree on the roles, but do maintain some flexibility with that because things can change. The project might evolve, it might develop in a slightly different direction. And so somebody else might be able to step in, or somebody's expertise might be able to fill a gap that you identify when you're partway down the track. And that's normal, that's absolutely fine. So being open to that is really important. But again, make sure at all times those lines of communication are kept open. Collaboration breaks down where communication stops. So any successful research project does depend on open, clear, fair communication all the way through. One final thing I wanted to recommend as well, I know I'm a little bit out of time, I apologise, is to consider multiple outputs. If you have 3 members of your team and you're all keen on being the first author, or you might think about doing 3 outputs and swap the order of authors throughout. So that's something that you might think about. making sure, of course, that the person who's nominated as the first author for each has done a substantial amount of work. We're not giving away authorship, and I think that is something that you need to keep in mind whenever you're dealing with these questions. So I have a couple of sources at the very end here that I'd encourage you to have a look at. There's some good reading in there. Of course, there's a whole world of collaboration literature out there that you can address if you'd like to. But I hope that just gave you a few things to think about. Very happy to talk questions. And of course, as I mentioned before, very happy to have you contact me after this if you'd like to discuss further. So thank you. I'll stop my share.
Thank you very much, Laura. Ladies and gentlemen, one question that you might have for Laura would be something like this. Laura, in your own experience, working with other researchers, what have you gained in terms of building and strengthening your research capacity? Perhaps if you can give one example of a project involving you and a junior colleague, and a project involving you and a more senior colleague, that would be really, really nice. 1 minute?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Willy. I might start with the example with me and a senior colleague.
Okay.
I have very fond memories of collaborating with my PhD supervisor, Associate Professor Indika Leonage, when I was working with him at Griffith and at Deakin Universities in Australia. I learned a lot about the process of publication and collaboration through doing that. It was always a really positive experience. Just being able to go through the process of just, for example, submitting a publication to a journal, understanding how to set it up, understanding how to respond to reviewers' feedback. Yes. That was extremely useful. I think, yeah, I would recommend that to all early career researchers.
Yes, so all under the guidance of a more senior, more experienced scholar.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
what about, working with junior colleagues?
Okay, well, I'm very privileged now to be working with some of my PhD candidates to submit things to journals. I'm helping them to craft their academic voice, and I'm assisting, I'm overseeing that process, and I'm sort of contributing what I can to developing their own confidence and expertise as authors. That is a very interesting process. It's different from what I thought it would be. Again, I'll use the word privileged. I feel really fortunate to be able to do it. I hope that I can give as much assistance to them as my supervisor gave to me. But it does help you to think about that. It helps you to think about really what goes into the process, because when you're, I think when you're providing guidance, you need a different level of understanding. So
great. Now here is a tricky question for you. Let's say after your presentation, a lot of people in the audience were very impressed by your presentations, and they want to work with you. They want to collaborate with you. Let's say that Roby here, whom you don't know very well, approach you by email and say, hey, Laura, would you want to work with me on this, World English project? What is your first initial reaction?
That's a great question. So I think to put this, all right, so if somebody approaches me to work on a project together, it's similar to if somebody approaches me for PhD supervision. I want to know why me? Why have they come to me? Why do they want to work with me? What do they think I'm going to contribute to the project? And what do they need for the project that I can do? So I expect to see some meaningful engagement with the research that I've published and some understanding of what it is that I specialize in and that what I'm happy to do. I think it's such a good question. I really think that meaningful selection of your collaborators is part of that. So why is it that somebody wants to work with you in particular, where there's a whole world of research collaborators out there?
Right. Great. Excellent. Fatiha. Fatiha is our special guest today, and she is also from University of Malaya. And do you have any thoughts, any things that you want to share?
I love the fact that Dr. Laura has given us some sort of guidelines on how to collaborate with other researchers, not just within this whole community, but interdisciplinary. I'm very lucky to have experienced collaboration with researchers from other disciplines. I joined this particular project with academic from engineering and computer science to develop assessment tools for teachers who are going to teach English using, who are going to teach science using English. I think it's a wonderful experience, having the opportunity to learn from others from other disciplines. I think it's a wonderful thing to do.
Great, excellent. Yes, there may be one or two members of the audience who might want to, share and ask questions. Perhaps I know that there's somebody here from New Zealand as well, but she completed her studies in New Zealand. Dr. Ani Mulyani. She is now a senior lecturer at the University, Public University in Indonesia. Ibu Ani, do you have any thoughts, any questions that you might want to share with us?
Yes, thank you, Pak Willy. Greetings from Indonesia, everyone. Thank you very much for the chance. It is very interesting that I actually learned something like this from Laura after I did my own collaboration. So my senior lecturer actually used to be my lecturer and then becoming my colleague. Come to me and then, Ani, what about working together? Actually, I was a bit afraid working with him.
Who is him?
He is very Pak Ali Sauka.
Okay.
Yeah, Pak Ali Sauka. And then because he is so famous, he is so he knows almost everything. And then why did he ask me to learn from you about this? So next time when I do a future collaboration, then I can use this. But what happened to me is the other way around. Thank you very much. It's very helpful. Very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Pak Willy.
That's a very interesting observation. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two ways of doing collaborative research. There are times when more senior colleagues might approach you for some research collaboration, but do not always wait for people to come to you. I think we also need to take a more proactive approach to collaboration. Yeah, you can also approach senior colleagues or the more well-established colleagues for collaboration. And do not be afraid if people say no. We just need to try it again. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything if people say no. You just need to do it again until eventually you find somebody. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we will continue our discussion in relation to research collaboration, maybe a bit later, questions maybe a bit later. But right now, I think we are about ready to listen to the second speaker, Dr. Zuwati Hashim, who is a senior lecturer at the School of Education, University of Malaya. She's a very experienced teacher and teacher educator, and her research interests include language education, student behavior, and also teacher behavior as well, and also professional development. And she'll be talking about a very, very important topic, mentoring early career researchers. If you're junior researchers, early career researchers, then this is something that you can learn from Zuwati Hashim's presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Zuwati Hashim.
Thank you, Dr. Willy, for the introduction. Can you tell me what do you see on the screen, please?
Your slide, yes. Very good.
Presentation mode.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Now,
good.
Okay. Okay, let me begin my presentation. I actually, adore Laura's presentation. She's very articulate in her presentation. Well, my topic is on mentoring early career researcher, in which in this presentation, I will try and relate with my own experience when I was an early career researcher and up to this point. Now, before we move on, I would like to define what do we understand from early career researcher. I've done, different views on early career researchers, all right? One of it is that it refers to individuals who are within 1 to 6 years of their academic appointment. And the other one is on scholars of undergraduate. It doesn't have to be postgraduate, scholars of undergraduate, graduate, postgraduate level, as well as up to 3 to 4 year. post-PhD duration. So I'm no longer in those areas anymore. Right? I'm sure Willy also and Laura has passed that duration.
Long ago, a long time ago, yes.
Right. Let's move on. So what we want to see is that how the process and what kind of experience early researchers would face before they become experienced researcher. Now, let's take a look at the concept of mentoring. What is mentoring actually? So from here, Shriver, Gregory, and Wilson define, all right, or they mention that the mentoring, the definition might vary, right, on the basis of the nature of the mentoring relationship. Okay, but the basic idea of mentoring is that a more experienced mentor acts as a guide and a teacher for a less experienced mentee by providing him or her career relevant support and advice. This is from Michalik and Poole, 2016. Okay. And actually, a mentor itself has many and varied meanings, right? It depends on the field of work, the nature of work. There is no single agreement on the definition, okay, on mentoring, but the fact that, as I mentioned here on the slide, the basic idea is that you have an experienced guiding the less experienced one. Okay, but I've kind of achieved mentoring myself. Yeah? Later on, I'll share with you what my perspective on mentoring. It doesn't have to be, just the experience guiding the inexperience. Now, I'm moving to looking at the benefits and the goals of mentoring. Sometimes people don't see the importance of it, and they find, well, I could learn myself through experience, and perhaps I don't need someone to help me. I've got books, I've got internet, I've got Google to help me. So, but the actual thing is that I couldn't see my slide here. Hang on.
No, I can see. I can see the slide.
Oh, you can see my slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. So among the goals and benefits of mentoring, I took from this, acronym involves improvement. All right. When it comes to mentoring, it involves improvement. It leads to success. The aim is for someone to achieve success, and it aims for training the young ones or the new ones, motivate people to stay in the line. Let's say in academic line, there are people who after a few years, they have decided to leave the academic line. Why is that so? So that mentoring is actually trying to motivate, the young ones to stay in the field. And the other one is to make sure that, the work accomplished. And the most important part is to inspire the new ones, to actually perform, to actually work together in the field. Okay, my own personal journey, I would like to share. But when I started teaching, there was no one mentoring me. Okay, so I learned from the experience, my own experience, the exposure, the environment that I had. And then after 5 years of working at one of the university, I joined University Malaya with my 5 year of experience. Even then, I had no mentor. Okay, perhaps, they were thinking that I have enough experience. But the fact that I really struggle in certain areas, I really struggle in certain areas, especially, for example, supervision, getting external grants, right? So that's why I said when I learned a lot from my supervisors, actually, when I had when I did my PhD, So Roger, informally, right? Informally, it's not a formal mentoring for me, I feel, you know. He didn't declare, actually, I'm your mentor, all right? I will guide you. No, he would never say that. And what I learned is through the collaboration, right? Through the collaboration whenever he invited me, you know, to do research work, when it comes to research ethics discussions. So a lot of input coming from our discussions, research network. Okay, even I've got to know Willy, I've got to know Laura, you know, from Roger, as well as from my former supervisor, Dr. Rosemary De Luca, and as well as on publication. So I've got a lot of experience, exposure from my PhD supervisors, apart from my own experience, you know, environment that actually more current position. Now, in terms of me as a mentee, I've also got senior colleagues as mentor, but again, this is informal. Okay, this is informal. It's not formal kind of training or kind of mentorship. And what I had through my experience, where the senior get me involved to be part of the, you know, national research. Through that, I had, you know, I started working. I see myself as research assistant, although I'm their colleague, you know, started from basics. So, but I took that opportunity as, you know, a platform for me to learn. So I look up at them as my mentor, right? Informally, they wouldn't recognize themselves as mentor, right? But I look up at them as my mentor because they've got a lot of experience. They are happy to help. They are happy to share, you know, their knowledge. So most of the time with my senior colleagues, you know, we talk about research work. I was guided on subject content knowledge, in which, for example, when I first joined Universiti Malaya, I think 3 senior lecturers, and one of them is a professor. They invited me to be in their class. Okay, Zuwati, come and join my class, you know, that kind of thing, and see what you can learn from my class. So I took that opportunity. To me, that is part of mentorship as well. All right, and the other one is peer as mentor. It doesn't have to be, to me, it doesn't have to be experienced, you know, real experienced person to be your mentor, but someone who has, you know, the knowledge that you don't have, although they are of the same level as you. Because I believe that we don't know everything, right? Laura, right? So what, if you can see on my slide, on grant application, supervision, teaching, these are the areas which I think, from my experience, right? From my experience, that I did not get mentorship formally or informally. You know, most of it is about research work. It's not about grant application, how to apply big grants. You know, there's no mentoring on that. How to supervise. I was given master students, but I was not trained on how to supervise. Okay, when I was just a junior lecturer. And then even in teaching, nobody taught me about pedagogy. Nobody, you know, but the fact that I did my BEd, Bachelor of Education, so pedagogy is not really an issue. It's just that transitioning from teaching matriculation students to undergraduate students, right? So adapting. They're my mentor because it was not, you know, officially as a mentor, but I see them as my mentor, right? So here are some of the projects that we have worked together. And from there, I believe, you know, working together, like Laura said, collaboration, okay? Collaborative work actually scaffold me, all right? And later, I actually have the autonomy to develop myself. And you know, I was rather brave to apply for big grants based on the experience, right? And here are the research, research grants which I've got from mostly government agency in Malaysia. And publications, if you notice, I've got Roger Barnard. He keeps on motivating me, persuading me to write, and later I also work with Wangi, Willy, so that collaboration started from, a small mentorship, informal mentorship, and then linking with other networks, all right? And if you notice, I've collaborated with Roger quite a few, along with my other supervisor. These are the works which I've published with my senior colleagues also, whom I see as my mentor, right? And we have worked together and I've learned a lot from them, right? So these are the areas for mentoring that I notice. Yeah? Grant application, which is very needed to me, I feel, for the early career to apply grant, how to write proposal to apply grant, slightly different perhaps, and different grant provider demands different things. Right? Recently, we had actually, I've actually invited Dr. Fatiha recently to work with my UK counterparts on the grant provided by British Council. So we tried together and applied that grant. Unfortunately, we didn't get, but that was a whole lot of experience. Yeah. So I believe, I don't know what Fatiha has actually achieved from that. Did you gain something?
Yeah, I learned a lot about communication, and then how perspectives are different from us. How we view second language teacher education in Malaysia is very different from how they view it in the UK. So it offers a lot of different perspective, and expand my worldview about research. Thank you for having me in that team, Dr. Zu.
No worries. I'm happy to have you on board. Right. These are the areas which I feel that we need to look into if we were to do a mentoring program. Now, again, back to Fatiha, which one of these areas that you think the most useful for early career researcher?
To be honest, I think they are all very important. Okay, even like me, even with almost 5 years of experience, I still think that I need to be mentored in some of those areas, but probably as a fully homegrown new academic like me, because I did both my bachelor degree and PhD in Universiti Malaya. Perhaps a research connection and community of practice, especially at international level, are the areas that require more support from more established mentors, because I think during my first few years, my colleagues and from the university, because besides playing the role as models to me and then supporters for me, they also introduced me to the right people. They play a role as acculturators so that I'm able to fully integrate into the TESOL community in national level as well as international level. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Fatiha, for your input. Let's move to the next one. All right, importance of mentoring for early career researcher, according to Baisley, without an established track record in attracting research funding and as yet unknown in the research community, new researchers are less able to match established researchers in such a competitive climate. I kind of agree with Baisley. When I was a young researcher, I feel it's very difficult for me to penetrate into, when I'm not a native speaker, when most of the, prominent one are the native speaker, all right? So I struggle. So I do agree with this, the statement given by Baisley. So by tagging along Roger My PhD supervisor and Rosemary, last time, I started, building my network from there. Now, working collaboratively, this, Laura has touched on this quite, substantially. Now, in achieving our goals, right, as a mentor, as a mentee, we have to work collaboratively. So I took these two statements by these scholars. They mentioned that the majority of mentoring research has concentrated only on the benefits derived by the mentee, right? While less attention has been given to the benefits of the mentor. Right? Most of the focus would be given to the mentee, all right? Another statement, mentoring relationship should bring about career growth and development for both the mentor and mentee. So I believe the second one, mentorship is actually helping both the mentor and the mentee. So we have to work collaboratively, all right? We have to work collaboratively. This is from Cram, 1988, all right? He came up with 2 key dimensions of mentoring. One is on career function, the other is on psychosocial function, right? If you notice here, the career function, of course, related to aspects of, developing the mentee's career function, all right? Where you train them to be a good, to psychosocial function, it's more on psychological being, right? You tend to motivate them, helping them, to actually adapt into the environment, see you as a role model and whatnot. Right. This is my suggestion, actually. When it comes to mentoring or mentorship, we've got to find the right people to work with, all right? If we find, someone who is not fit to be our mentor, I think there will be, issues later, right? So I would suggest that you find the right people to work with so that you feel comfortable. Community of support or practice, the right community of support, the right community of practice is actually helping, helping earlier, right? Some of the points I put here, relevant to the fields of research, right, or content knowledge. You need to find someone that, you are comfortable and easy to work with. You don't want someone to, someone who really feels superior, that, everything you have to follow. Okay, then the idea of negotiation is not there, right? The other point is that you need to find someone with the right attitude. Okay, because that someone will be your role model. That someone will motivate you, all right, to support you, give constructive feedback on you. That someone must be sincere and honest, all right, and willing to share, most importantly, willing to share, all right. And the last one I put here, embrace diversity and respect others, all right. No matter how, how different you are from the other person, we must respect the others, right? Has the time passed, Willy?
Oh, I'm just coughing. No, I'm just clearing my throat. But yes, 1 minute for you.
Okay, right. I just got a few more slides. Now, I've put also here, mentoring is one of the ways that may help early career researchers with their transitioning process, right? The transition from, with less experience to a more experienced academics or ELT teachers. It may help with their transition process and their research career development, okay? Mentoring itself can be formal, it can be informal. I noticed that, like Universiti Malaya has actually provided training to the early career researchers, which is good, so I could see the improvement, the development in that. So most of the early career researchers would have the, Okay, mentorship involvement. In academia, actually, mentorship can occur between experienced researchers and early career researchers, between academic and students, and also among peers. So it's at all levels. It's at all levels. Yeah. So here are some of the sources which I've referred to for the points which I've given all of you. And here is my background. If you notice, if you have seen my CV, my area of focus is not just on ELT or ESL, because my basic degree is in education. So I don't want to lose that. You know? So my focus would be generally about teacher education, student behavior, teacher behavior, as well as on language learning. And my PhD was on applied linguistics, on assessment specifically. So with that, I thank all of you for listening. Thank you.
Clap, clap, clap. Everyone, please clap, clap, clap for Dr. Zuwati Hashim. I'm glad that Roger is back. Roger, is it true that you've been mentoring Zuwati Hashim? Roger is a very senior faculty, currently
Roger.
teaching at which university? Same university as Laura, yeah? Waikato University. Roger, your audio is off.
Roger, your audio is
Yes.
off.
Yes,
Okay.
great.
Yes, good. Well, Zuwati was kind enough to say that I had helped her in her early career as a researcher. And indeed, as a PhD supervisor, I very, very consciously adopted the role of mentor because I had a little bit more experience.
Yes.
But of course, as the PhD candidate carries on, they increasingly grow until when they finish their PhD, they know a damn sight more about whatever it is they're studying than I do, or in fact, anybody else. So what happens is I learn inevitably to respect my candidates, my PhD students. And as Zuwati said, there are benefits to the mentor, which I have felt considerably. However, subsequent to the PhD, the whole point of the mentor is then to open the doors. And Zuwati mentioned research connection. And what I have tried to do is to introduce my PhD student or my ex-peer, the existing and ex-peer to the wider academic community.
Very important.
And this has brought me many benefits, I can assure you, because I'm able with this with them widely.
Great, excellent. Yes, Roger. Ladies and gentlemen, the two presentations we have just heard together actually, say a lot about the importance of us working with other people. Basically, the big picture is this: two heads are better than one. And because of that, one question that we need to ask ourselves is this: do you know a lot of people in our field? I think Fatiha mentioned earlier on about the academic community, about the TESOL community. Do you belong to any community at the moment? How many friends do you have? I mean, I'm talking about not social, Facebook things, but how many people do you know? I think if you know only 10, then I think you need to further expand your network, get to know a lot more people. It is very important when you want to work with people, when you want to get some advice from other people. I think the first thing you need to do is to get to know them. And people whom you know, or people who know you, will be in a much, much better position to give you advice, to send you resources, and many other very important resources to help you develop in your research and publication career. Ladies and gentlemen, the last session today is by Dr. Roby Marlina of SEAMEO-RELC. He is a very senior, can I say that, Roby? Very senior language specialist SEAMEO-RELC is different. It's not a university. Yeah? So the faculty members there are language specialists and senior language specialists. This is an excellent, one of the best language centers in the world, providing a lot of teacher education courses in the region. Once upon a time, I was also a member of that organization. I spent about 10 years there, and I enjoyed, tremendous benefits of knowing a lot of people in the region. So if you ask me how many people I know me, it's about 10,000 people, because I belong to this Facebook group with more than 10,000 people in it. And that to me is a very, very rich, network of friends. Roby will be sharing with you a very, very important topic. Yes, you may have done your research, you may have done, written out your paper, but eventually you need to get the approval of people like Roby and many other people who are editors. So Roby is an editor of a high-profile journal at least in this area in Asia. The name of the journal is the RELC journal. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Roby and Marlina, who will be sharing with you about tips on how to get not to be rejected in your submissions to journals.
Okay,
Roby.
all right. Thank you, Willy, for your very kind words and very generous of you, and we are very much humbled by your kind words. Okay, so can you all see senior language specialist, just a senior language specialist and an editor of the RELC of the RELC journal? Okay, so first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak about ways in which journal editors can help support early career researchers, PhD students in their research journey. So one way that I can do as a journal editor is to talk to you about what editors and reviewers are usually looking for when reviewing manuscripts. Okay. So these are what I'm going to talk about today. But before showing you the criteria or the questions that reviewers are often asked to use to evaluate the suitability of your manuscripts, I'd like to begin my talk just by stressing, now when you're finalizing your research papers and you're looking for an outlet, a journal to publish your research papers, what do you usually do? What's the first thing that you do when let's say you stumble upon this journal? What do you do? What's the first thing that you do? Maybe you can share this with me. So here's the QR code. For YouTube viewers, you can sort of scan this, or if you don't have a QR code scanner, you can just key in that link down there and just open it in a Google browser or Internet Explorer, whatever, please. And that will take you to this page. And then all you need to do, just click on that little plus button at the bottom. It'll show you that. And you can type, and you publish it. So those who are here in Zoom, you can actually just, type it in the chat box. But those who are not in the Zoom, in the YouTube, so you can share that with me. So the first thing that you do when you stumble upon a journal and you want to publish in the journal, what do you look at or what do you do? Okay, now I've received a few comments now. So look at the submission criteria, aim and scope, author, submission guidelines. So I'll give you guys about 2 minutes to share this with me. Okay,
Write so if you a nice email message to the editor. How about that?
Yes, you can write to us and say, hey, I'm interested, so would you be interested in publishing our work? Then we will certainly consider it. So 2 minutes for you guys to share your thoughts on what you usually do, your usual practice. Okay, great. In journals ranking, all right. Submission criteria, think about the discussion of the paper that you contribute. Okay, journal scope, frequency of publication. Yes, that's very important. Check the scope of the journal. Yes, look through the table of contents. Yes,
If there's a conversation, I can join.
And if there's a conversation that you can join, yep. Oh, sorry, you mean?
Well, I mean in the journal. Sorry, I can't manipulate this on the screen.
That's all right, no worries.
So see if people are writing about the things that I'm interested in.
Yep, definitely, yes. Anything else?
Whether the journal is open access.
And whether the journal is open access, absolutely.
Is there a publication charge?
Oh, yes.
Very important.
Is it free?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we provide any editing service? That's also another one. Okay. Journals requirements. Okay, thank you so much. Have I cited papers from the journal? Yes. Okay. So I keep looking.
How long is the review process?
How long does it take? Yes. How long does it take? Yep. Because of course you want your papers, you want your data to be, still fresh, when it's out there. Yep. Great. Check the introduction, look at the journals like the impact factor, the index. Okay, looking through the contents and the topics. Okay. So a few more seconds and then we'll move on. Frequency of publication, is it quarterly, yearly? Yep. Okay, any special issues, any themes? Yep.
Acceptance rate.
Acceptance rate, yes. Usually some journals don't sort of publish the acceptance rate, but you can always write to us and we'll certainly let you know what the acceptance rate is. Okay, all right. So let's move on. I think that there are two things that I really want to emphasize. Okay, so first thing is the scope of the journal. So the reason why I emphasize the importance of knowing about the journal, especially the scope, is because a lot of papers that get desk rejected are manuscripts from authors who unfortunately haven't got to know the journals very well yet. Yeah. So for example, so if you look at the RELC journal, you can see that it has a heavy, strong focus on language teaching and language assessment and language curriculum. So within the paradigm of ELT, okay? Whereas if you look at other journals like World English is also an applied linguistics journal. You can see that they are sort of more interested in sociolinguistics rather than language teaching. Yes, there is an emphasis on language teaching as well, but the focus is really on cross-cultural identities and perspectives. So as you can see, yes, we do have, a gazillion amount of journals in the field, but I think it's very, very important for you to look at the aims and the scope. And if you're not so sure whether, your article will fit in, write to us, write to the editors and check with us to see, do you think this will fit into your within the scope of the journal? Now, the second thing about the journal that I often encourage authors to have a look at is the types of articles that they publish. So for example, like the RELC journal has many different types of articles. There are about 5 different types, and the editors are looking for different things in each type. And each type has its own purpose, has its own structure, has its own rhetorical convention. So if you want to see more details, you can actually just scan the provided QR code there. Now, it's not just RELC journal, but also many other journals as well, like the ELT journal. So this is published by the Oxford University Press, and you can see that they have about 7 or 8 different types of articles. So you can also scan the provided QR code there. So really, what is the implication of this? So the implication is, please do check out the type of articles that the journals publish. Make sure that what you've written, what you've collaborated, sort of adheres to the kind of required convention of each article type. Submitting an action research paper as a research article is not a good idea, because you will get a rejection straight away, not because the quality is bad, but it's just the wrong genre. Okay, so research article has a sort of different convention. So if I were you, if you want to publish a paper, for example, with the RELC journal or any other ELT journals, I recommend you look at the examples of the article types. Look at some of the samples. And for RELC journal, we do have samples there free of charge. You can download it, okay? And that's the QR code for you all. Okay, so I'll move on to the second part of my talk, and that is the criteria. I think that these are the ones that a lot of people want to know. I know that there's so much information, but anyway, I will just summarize them. So to talk about the criteria, I will use what reviewers say when they accept or reject papers, and I've extracted these from all the reports that I've been receiving. Then I will end my talk with 8 questions that reviewers are often asked to use to evaluate the manuscript. So which I think this will be helpful for you to refer to when writing your papers with your colleagues or even by yourself. And these questions are not just from the RELC journal, but it's also from various international ELT journals that I've been asked to use to review their manuscripts. I hope that's okay. But anyway, I'll just look for some commonalities and similarities, and I'll put it all together in a PowerPoint slide for you. Okay, so these are some of the cases when our reviewers or editors reject the article. I think that the first thing is really not meeting the basic criteria. Like, for example, the author's names are visible. Yes, you may think, oh, how is that possible? It's not, well, there have been a lot of cases where sometimes when we type, we usually forget, we may have overlooked, putting our work there. And when it's there straight away, it will get rejected. Especially because some journals, we go through sort of blind review. So please do check the journal's author's guidelines. Yeah, because every journal has its own publishing conventions. Okay. All right. Secondly, lots of typographical errors, things like intolerable linguistic errors. So please do get a critical friend to read and give you comments. I think that if you're working together with colleagues, senior colleagues, or colleagues at the same, level, then I think it's best to have someone. I think that going back to what Laura said earlier, 2 heads work better than 1, okay, or giving roles. So maybe one of your colleagues could be, so depending, because there are some people who are very anal about the language, and this is the best person who can, have a look at your work before you send it out to the journals. Okay, next one is outdated sources. Literature not coming from not from the recently published works, okay, or from not credible sources, like from predatory or bogus journals or from websites, Wikipedia. These are the things that are usually not accepted by the reviewers and the editors. So please make sure that you cite recent and credible sources. Okay, lots of statistical findings or interview excerpts. Yeah, some articles, my goodness, I mean, it's great. And sometimes I wish I could have the brain, to understand the maths. But actually, it's the author's responsibility to use those maths. And I think the easiest way to help you think about the way you present your data is unpack it, explain it, and discuss the implications and applications. So think of it as what. So what have you found? So what? So what have you learned? Or what have you, so what's so significant about this data? And now what? So that's the implications and the application of your data. Okay, these are the last 2 reasons that reviewers are likely to reject the papers. No research gap. Usually people want to know, so what are you researching? What's so new? What's so significant about your work? Any scholarly support. So not just simply saying, well, to the best of our knowledge, no research has been I'm sorry, if please do not write in this way. We have been receiving lots and lots of manuscripts written in this way. And unfortunately, we cannot accept it because, you know, if it is a research article, we want to know, you know, is there anyone supporting what you were saying, or what you've said? Yeah. So significance, rationale, and how do the findings add to the current knowledge about the topic? And what contribution does it make, or will this make? So I think that is really, really important. Okay, the last one is methodology. Is methodology too simple? So what do I mean by that? So usually when the moment, you know, our reviewers say, well, I'm sorry that the methodology is overly simplistic, then that's where I would look at it carefully. So for example, when your work is on a study on perception. Now, is it enough just to use survey, for example, as a research instrument? Is it enough to use questionnaire, for example? So I think, again, going back to what Laura said, you know, you can sort of work with others who have, you know, maybe different specialities, or maybe you have quantitative researchers, you have qualitative researchers, work with them, you know, just to produce better results. To showcase that your methodology is not overly simplistic, but it's enough, you know, to generate findings. Now, if you think that survey is adequate, then you have to convince us. Then you have to convince the reviewers why this particular research instrument or methodological approach is justifiable, or it's effective. Okay. So what are the manuscripts that are likely to be accepted? Firstly, I think that a lot of our reviewers want to know whether the paper really addresses the real needs of these group of people, or whoever the research, your research participants, whether they're learners, they're teachers in your context. And most importantly, please support. What I mean by that is please provide scholarly support. Secondly, the manuscript is engaging and offers, you know, novel perspective, something original. Even though, yes, you may not be able to come up with something completely groundbreaking, but if you have something sort of quite original and a little bit different from the mainstream, and you support it, I think reviewers will love that. And lastly, it's meeting the standards of academic writing conventions. So again, this is the, you can see that collaboration is really important, and the whole thing of mentoring. And may I just emphasize that mentoring sometimes also, it comes from the reviewers. You don't know the reviewers, but that is what they call indirect mentoring. So the reviewers actually do take time. They sit down and they read your manuscript, and they will give you comments. For me, that is also another form of mentoring, but the comments are usually helpful. Okay. And well, I don't know if this is a secret, but I have seen some editors, including myself, when manuscripts have been submitted to us, I usually look at the references, and the people that you cite frequently, or whose works are frequently cited, that's likely to be one of the reviewers. Yeah. For example, if you cite a lot of works by Willy Renandya, so he is likely to be one of the reviewers. Okay, so usually I try to do that so that, you know, at least they'll be able to give you a different perspectives on things. Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to, so these are the last two slides. So I'm pretty much on time here, I think. So these are the 8 questions that you may want to consider, you may want to think about. So does the manuscript, first of all, identify, justify, and respond to the gaps in the field of inquiry? Secondly, does the manuscript review recent, relevant, and reliable literature? So the 3 R's there: recent, relevant, and reliable. Thirdly, does it offer new and significant insight information to justify publication? Does it explain and justify the theoretical, the conceptual, the methodological matters? So if you're not so sure about all the theoretical paradigms, consult a colleague. Yeah, again, going back to what Laura said. Okay, are the interpretations, conclusions justified? And are there study limitations and future research? Is there a clear and strong relationship between theory and pedagogical practice? You know, this is very important, especially when you want to publish with the ELT journals. Readers, because a lot of our readers are also practitioners themselves, and they want to know how they can sort of make good use of your research. How can I do this in a classrooms? So I think that it's really important for us to think about the practical implications of your research. What can teachers do in a classroom? And it's got to be more, it's got to be very specific, concrete, not something that teachers can just have a discussion in class. That's sort of too general. So it's got to be more concrete, more specific. Okay, and lastly, of course, is the submitted manuscript well written and well structured? So in summary, please know more about your journal, know your journal well. If you don't know so much about it, if the information is unclear, on the website, write to the editors. Yes, we are busy people, but we will also need to respond to your queries. Find out about the requirements, and lucky last, look at some samples of articles from the journal. Again, if you're not so sure about the requirements.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Roby and Marlina. Roby,
yes.
One quick question for you.
Yes.
I am guessing that the rejection rate of your journal, the RLT journal, is indexed in Scopus and also indexed in the SSCI, abstracting services. Very high profile journal. I'm guessing that your rejection rate is probably in the 95% and above. That being the case, do you enjoy rejecting and accepting people's submission?
Okay. Of course, when we reject, we do reject with reasons. And yeah. I look at, the comments. I do take into consideration comments from reviewers. So it's not just simply me rejecting based on my, the way I read the articles, but whose work appears very frequently in the article. Yeah. It's likely. I'm just saying it's likely because I have also been approached by different journals, and then the starting of the sentence is, this manuscript has been submitted to this journal, and your work appears in this manuscript. Usually you get to go, oh yeah, okay, I want to know what the authors have said, So yeah.
Yes, Roby, there's a question from the audience. Research gap. What is research gap? If you are new, if you are researching a new topic, for example, how on earth do you know whether there is a gap there? What is a gap? How do you find out about this?
Okay, so I think that the gaps are what's missing in the conversation, what hasn't been done. And if I were you, I would look at, or to look for gaps, usually I would look for, maybe you can read some handbooks of, whatever English language teaching, or even sometimes encyclopedia, the recently published TESOL encyclopedia, lots and lots of articles in the field. And usually the authors are required, because I was one of them, and then the editors actually asked me to write, what are the future research directions?
Right, yeah.
And it's there, and usually you get it straight away from, if you cite from that work, I mean, it's okay with us because it's a credible source.
Right.
Yeah. So if I were you, to look for missing gaps, handbook and encyclopedia. Yeah.
Great. Yes, great advice. Yes, Roger. Yes.
A useful one is the state-of-the-art article.
Yes,
absolutely.
I like that. Yes, state-of-the-art. Or in our RELC journal, we do have one of the article types is the viewpoint. So usually this viewpoint, it's invited manuscript, and we usually invite, able to show you the evolution of the field and then what is next. And this is something that young researchers, PhD students can refer to, and will make your work more, interesting.
Yes. Can I just mention one journal by
Yes.
Cambridge University Press, and the name of that journal is Language Teaching. That journal publishes only literature review articles or state-of-the-art articles. So that is one place that you want to go to and find a topic that you are investigating, that you are researching, and then read that state-of-the-art article. I think Roger is correct. If you are able to find that state-of-the-art article, then chances are you'll be able to see maybe 2, 3, or maybe 10 research gaps that you can address.
Or there is another one called the annual review of
That's the other one.
I
Yes.
think that's also something that young researchers can have a look at. Yeah,
Excellent.
because it's a review of the
Yes,
entire
a review.
field.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct. Yeah.
so it helps with your literature review.
Yes, yes. Junior faculty, graduate students do not have the luxury of reading 200 papers or even have access to these wonderful resources like language teaching or annual review of applied linguistics. Zuwati, as a mentor, would you help your mentee or your graduate students identify a research gap? Or would you ask them to please go ahead and find out for yourself? Research is graduate studies, graduate research is an independent field of study.
Well, usually I would ask them, what would be the research gaps that you would like to address, in research or even in your writing.
Yeah.
So that is very important because that is one way of guiding researcher.
Yes. If after trying for 6 months, they still yourself in a position to, okay, look at this. This is the gap. Laura, you can also respond to that.
At certain time, yes. It's that before that, I would ask them to at least do
your work first. Yeah.
Okay. Systematic review. So that they could see the patterns in the research. And if they still couldn't find it, I would point out at least one area, right?
Okay.
At least one area, not all.
Right. Yes. Laura?
No, I totally agree with that. I might just add to the conversation that a research gap can look different depending on what you're doing. So it might be a logical gap, it might be a theoretical gap, it might be a practice-based gap. So I think that's something we can nudge our supervisees in the right direction by helping them to identify what is and isn't a gap, because sometimes they come up with things that are very small or overly big that you can't possibly address in 1 or 2 papers or even a PhD project, or it's too small or too insubstantial. Have the shape of it in an appropriate way.
Yes. Okay. Next question for all the panel members: how often do you get rejected, and what do you do when your submissions get rejected? And what would be your advice to a lot of people here in the audience who might have experienced the same thing, like telling you, I've submitted my manuscript, which I think is a masterpiece, but it's been rejected 5 times. What do they need to do? Advice, any tips?
I think I have to share my experience.
Yes, please go.
First of all, I think it's early career researchers or PhD candidates need to understand that rejection is normal in academic.
Is it really?
Don't get disappointed or don't get demotivated by the comments or rejections. So instead, look at the comment provided by the reviewer. Usually they give very thorough comment, especially if you submit your article to a good journal, and use that to improve the manuscript. If you can resubmit or you can submit to other journals.
Good. Yes. Before the other panel members respond, there's a member from the audience, Marlina. That sounds like millionaire, from the Philippines. Yes. Would you like to share, your thoughts about rejections? You said that you don't want to submit your papers because of the fear of being rejected.
Actually, I had already submitted 5, but since they had already approved our submission, and another thing, since we cannot actually submit it also to some of the particularly to the languages, so it's so hard for us to be passing something in which there is always that kind of fear to be rejected. Actually, since we have been passing, but there are times in which our focus is not only on the language teaching, but it is more on the literature. But since this is language teaching, so therefore it's so hard for us to be giving our manuscript to the RELC, since it is more, our focus is more on the literature. So therefore it's so hard for us to be to really, we know how to adjust when it comes to the following the requirements. But since it is more on the language teaching, as you have said, it is more on language teaching. So therefore, we have to find another area or another journal to be accepting, to accept our research.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Malina, you're saying that you submitted your manuscript to the RLC journal and it got rejected. Is that what happened?
For my researches, no, they have actually printed. They have already they are already in the journal, international journals, but not in the RELC. Much as I wanted to join.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Other panel members, please. What advice, in addition to what Fatiha has mentioned earlier on, what advice would you give to a junior colleague, graduate students who want to get published, but they have experienced a lot of rejections? Is it nice to be rejected? Is it something that is necessary?
I mean, I was also, I started as a writer too. I started as a researcher, and I'm still writing, and then I'm still, sending papers to other journals. Even though I'm an editor myself, it doesn't mean that I've stopped writing. I still do. I still send to journals, and I get rejected.
You mean you can't send your manuscript to yourself?
No, I'd rather not to. No, I send it to other journals because I don't mind rejection, because I would like to see comments. I like to see, I like to see what is really not great, for example, from the study that I can improve. So yes, if the comments are reasonable, because I'm also in the shoes of the authors as well. So I would look at the manuscript. So for example, if I receive reports from reviewers whose comments are completely unreasonable, I would. So usually, yes, I'm sorry if my reviewers are in the audience, very sorry, but I do expect reviewers to send reasonable, decent comments to help these writers, please do not fear rejection. Rejection is, as I say, it's a one way of it's one way for you to learn. As I said before at the beginning, it's an indirect mentoring. When you work with colleagues, your colleagues will tell you to the face as well. They say, sorry guys, this is not working. Same thing. It's just that the difference is you don't know who said it.
Right. Yes.
Right.
I wonder if you have heard about this experience. I'm sure some of the members may have heard about this. They submit their paper, submit their manuscript to a journal, and immediately, Roger, it gets accepted. But along with the acceptance letter, you also get an invoice, $300. Roger, is that something that you have heard before?
I'm now retired, so I can't afford it, but I would never pay for an academic article to be published. I can understand if you are in a scientific or there's commercial sensitivity, I can understand you want it done very, very quickly and so on and so forth. But that's not my experience. But I would not pay. I mean, we do these things out of a sort of sense of fraternal solidarity, helping each other, mentoring each other. But just one thing, it's never rejection. Very rarely is it just rejection. There's always some comment that you can build upon and in a sense go down the list. I say to my particularly PhD, aim as high as you can. If you get rejected, then you look at the comments, improve your article, and then go down the list, as it were. But three times from three separate journals. Start something else.
Then start something
else. Otherwise, I think persevere.
Yes, I agree.
What is the name? What is the name of the? Zuwati, go ahead.
I do agree with Roger. Persevere is the word. In reality, after you got rejected, of course, you will feel sad. You know, the moment you see the word rejected, oh, that's it. I'm going to close this, you know.
Yep.
But after a while, you know, like myself, I give it a few days and then to revisit.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
to
a good point.
revisit and have a look at the work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So,
And
so
send it
that,
elsewhere.
you know, being resilient in that, you know, looking at the comments and whatnot, building
Yes,
up.
I think that is extremely, extremely important. What happened, do you think, if J.K. Rowling had decided not to continue with her first Harry manuscript?
Yeah.
She was rejected not one time, not two times, not three times. So 3 times rejection is nothing. 12 times rejected. But she persevered, and eventually it became a work, bestseller.
Yeah.
So yes, so the message for people here in the audience is keep trying. And another important thing for us is this. We are very lucky because in English language teaching, English language teacher education, for example, there are thousands of journals out there. Millennia literature, unfortunately, there's not that many journals out there, but English language teaching, thousands of them. Not all of them are of high quality. Not all of them are Scopus, indexed in Scopus or other, prestigious indexes, but there are a lot of good journals out there. Usually, those journals published by universities or professional associations. Those are very, very good journals. Yeah. At this point, I would like to open up the discussion to the audience. If you have any thoughts, any questions, anything to do with research and publication, please raise your hand, and you can start, asking or commenting, using the audio.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about high quality journals.
Yeah.
But there are other journals, and I'm thinking particularly of Modern English Teacher and 1 or 2 other journals, which have got a very wide readership.
Yes.
And sometimes it's how many, let's be frank, TESOL Quarterly, we get the journal, we look through the things, we probably don't read one.
No.
Or maybe we do read one. But if you take a journal like Modern English Teacher, which is unrefereed, it's not high quality, but it's very readable and it reaches, I mean, the subscription is 3,000. The subscription is, and that goes into many language schools, staff room.
Very teacher friendly. You don't have to write 6,000 words. Anything that is very practical, things that you have experienced yourself in the classroom, like you can write it up in 1,000 words or 2,000 words, send it for publication. That would be an excellent, excellent experience for you.
Yeah.
It may not, really, one of the highlights of your academic publications, but it's a very, very good experience. And the plus point is always,
pay you.
Yes. Oh, they pay you. Yes, they pay you $100 actually. Yeah, for writing. I mean, yes, I've been paid 3 times. Roger, I have 3 small publications in the Modern English Teacher. And there are other journals like that. An online journal called Humanizing Language Teaching. I think that is also an excellent journal for people who are more practice-oriented than the more research-oriented
Can
people.
I also suggest that graduate students should be encouraged to write book reviews?
Excellent idea. Yes.
And your journal has book reviews, and I don't quite know how to get onto the panel. But of course, one of the advantages of being a book reviewer is you actually get the book.
Yes, free copy of the book.
If you become an established member of the panel,
yes,
and the editor knows that you're a good reviewer or even an okay reviewer,
yes,
then he will suggest, would you like to review these books? So
yes, another way, Roger, of getting a free book is to for publishers to ask for your endorsement. So at the back cover of the book, you just write 1 or 2 sentences, usually nice things about the book, and then the publishers will send you a free copy of the book to you. Panel members, junior faculty members, or those people working at or teaching at the university, they're often required, so to speak, to get a regular publication. at least one, but sometimes some universities require that you publish 2 or 3 a year. In your experience, Laura, Zuwati, and Roby, how do you manage, getting published, for example, 2 or 3 in a year? What is a strategy? What do you do? Any thoughts? Please go ahead.
I'm happy to have a go at responding to that. I think I'll go back and make another reference to my presentation on collaboration. I think a really good way of keeping your mind fresh and keeping yourself interested in your research and also keeping your output regular is to have a few collaborations going at the same time. Excellent. That might be at different stages. So they talk about the research pipeline, don't ever have nothing on the go. I think that's a really good way of doing it. I think if you could have a few pipes, not just a single pipe that has, cold water, have a hot water, cold water, and another thing pipe all coming at the similar, at the same time, but producing different kinds of work and with different people, maybe one's by yourself, one's with 2 or 3 others, and so on and so forth. I think that's a really nice way of keeping yourself interested and motivated. I like to have a few things to think about. I never just like to be working on one project. So I enjoy that because it's motivating, but it's also practical because you will have more regular submissions and different people to work with, which is really rewarding.
Actually, may I just comment? So I think it's also how we conceptualize research as well. So research is not necessarily just something experimental, and then you have to have a focus group and then a control group and whatnot. So sometimes it also comes from your teaching experiences, or when you're teaching, you found something that you want to write about, that you're passionate about, or that you've stumbled upon this amazing, technology or digital tool that has sort of helped your students learn the language, and you want to share it with the community. So now, by doing that, you will have different research projects already or writing. For example, like the ELT journal has this one type of article called The View from Here. So if you go to their website, The View from Here means you are writing about a particular issue from here, from your own view. So where you write about your perspectives, and the good thing is the editor there, you can sort of write to the editor first and say, hey, I've got an idea here. This is my draft. What do you think? So that's also an idea. That's also another way of sort of generating a piece of writing. So it doesn't have to be something so experimental and
right. Yes. Okay. Roby, you are probably suggesting that we don't always have to write and publish research papers, empirical papers.
Yes.
Occasionally, from time to time, you may want to put some thoughts together from insights, working with other teachers, with students, and from your reading, and put together a conceptual paper. Conceptual paper is usually more readable, if you like, compared to an empirical paper. So there are opportunities for you to write different types, actually, of academic papers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any other thoughts from Zuwati? Anything to add? Audience? Audience, any questions, any thoughts, anything else that you want to share with us? Okay, closing remarks. Closing remarks from all the 4 panel members. Fatiha, Laura, Zuwati, and also Roby. 1 sentence is okay, 5 sentences are fine too. I'll leave it to you. Closing remark. Tips, advice for people to keep building on their research capacity and also on further strengthening their research.
Okay, perhaps I would like to share with the audience that don't be shy, be brave, just try. Okay. Well, based on my experience, just try, and work together collaboratively, and most importantly, be sincere. I have to thank Roger a lot. I've learned a lot from him, from his practice, and even from my other supervisor, Rosemary DeLuca, and I learned a lot about ethics from her, So and rejection is normal. Okay,
Yes.
it's normal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just keep up doing whatever that you plan to do.
Right.
So on the
So
note,
yes, Zuwati is saying, if you have never been rejected, that is not normal.
It's not normal. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Serious,
on the note
yes.
about
That's not-
on the
yeah.
note about being brave, also be brave to write to the editors. Write to us and say, look, I would like to write about this. I'd like to publish this. What's your thought on it? Is it within your scope?
Yeah.
Write to us. We're not monsters. Or yes, when we send out, love letters,
Rejection
we may sound like monsters, but guess what? I mean, that's a template thingy that the publisher has given us. So it may sound like we're very, we were like, Hulk, but actually, yes, we're trying to help you as well in your research. And as I said, I just wanted to emphasize the whole idea of indirect mentoring that you probably get from someone who is objective and someone who wants you to do well, even though it's not now, you're not fated to publish in this particular journal, but there's plenty of fish in the sea, as what Willy said earlier.
Yeah. Great idea, great advice. Write to the editors. But do remember, write nicely and write politely as well. I think that is extremely important. I've received some email messages from people asking for advice, but the email message is not nice. So I either not respond or I say, well, think about this yourself. Yeah. So communication skills is extremely important. So try to be nice to people. I mean, Roby is a nice person. He will be a nicer person if you write nice letters to him. Laura.
Thank you. I think my contribution would simply be to say, don't define yourself too narrowly as a researcher. Be open to experimenting with ideas. I'm not saying fling yourself around all sorts of different huge bodies of literature. I'm definitely not saying that. But I think some of us really narrowly think this is what I do. I'm this person. And, I'm a bit, it could be because we're a little shy and we're a little anxious about going beyond that field. But I think in terms of just to link it back to collaboration and also to work that you do by yourself and to your teaching and to your supervision, don't narrowly define yourself because you're not doing yourself any favors by doing that. I think be open, stay interested, and be a bit experimental if you're comfortable to do that. Yeah. And you'll get rewards from that. It will be satisfying.
Great advice. Fatiha? Any final thoughts? Yes.
I have a message for early career researcher. I think that we should not wait for opportunity to come to us. Rather, we have to hunt for that opportunity. And so we have to be proactive about it. Yeah, we don't want to just survive in this academia. We want to flourish at the same time.
I like that. Yes. Thank you very much, panel members, ladies and gentlemen. And that ends our discussion today. I hope you have enjoyed the sharing and the interaction today. And we are looking forward to seeing you again. Let's give our thanks to University of Malaya that hosts today's session. Clap, clap, clap for Zuwati and University of Malaya.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Panel members, please stay for a minute or two after the audience has left the Zoom room.